guys. That was pretty wow. You can't tell I'm suffering from allergies like you wouldn't even be able to understand after a week in the redwoods and now a week back at home. I want to go back to the redwoods. I mean, don't get me wrong. My eyes watered constantly, and it was a different kind of allergies. But God, this sucks. Welcome back to the Squatchers Lounge podcast, anyhow. And I am indeed your host, the Reverend Jeff Kelly. And with us tonight is the special guest, Mr. Cameron Young, cryptid investigator from the Great White North of Canada, is here along with us, and the creator of the Canadian Prairie Sasquatch Research Project. Welcome aboard, Mr. Cameron Young, tonight, sir. How are you?
Not too bad, Jeff. How are you doing? I hope you and your family are staying safe at this crazy time.
Oh, it's all a bunch of friggin' hooey, man. Don't you even listen to that friggin' crap, bro. I'm dead. Look. I am not saying that the coronavirus doesn't kill people. Not saying that. I'm saying that people who live like rats and live in democratic controlled friggin' nonsensical, stupid amounts of people have an infectious disease problem like they did during the plague. I get that, but the rest of the country does not. And if you want to look at something really scary in America, Cameron, since you brought it up,
my bad.
No. If you lay over the coronavirus hotspots with the gun hotspots, guess what? They line up. Now, what does that tell you?
Americans like their guns?
No, it tells you that the same cities that have a coronavirus problem because they live like rats have a gun problem because they live like rats. So anyhow, yeah, moving right along.
Yeah.
Tonight we are talking about the Minnesota Iceman. That's right. We're talking about him tonight. So let's take a look here. Wikipedia, our go-to source for important information, tells us that it's been described as a male human-like 6 foot, roughly tall figure, hairy, with large hands and feet. Very dark brown hair, about 3 to 4 inches or 9 centimeters for you people who are watching overseas. And we are international, damn it. Long and flattened nose. One of its arms appeared to be broken, and one of its eyes appeared to have been knocked out of its socket, allegedly by a bullet that was said to have entered the creature's head from behind. Poor bastard. You didn't even have the guts to shoot him face to face. Scientists determined that it was likely to be a hoax due to Neanderthals going extinct thousands of years ago. Now, the original history, according to this, says the promoter and exhibitor Frank Hansen stated the Minnesota Iceman was discovered in a region of Siberia and that he was acting as its caretaker for an absentee owner he described as an eccentric California millionaire. Now, Jed, you move away from there. California is where you ought to be. So he loaded up that piece of shit he called a truck and he moved to Beverly. Touring the carnivals and fairs with the exhibit, Hansen was once reportedly detained by Canadian customs officials who were concerned he was transporting a cadaver. That's right. Blame Canada. We love Canada. It's America's hat. The FBI was informed that the subject might potentially be a human murder victim, but the agency did not investigate, possibly due to many believing that it was a hoax. So there you have it. That's the introduction to the Minnesota Iceman. Yeah. So tell us, Cameron, what did your research start out with?
Well, to be honest, I mean, this is something I've heard about a long time before, just in books and stuff like that. But I came across recently 3 separate documentaries. And what I've noticed doing this research for the show, there were multiple stories on how this all happened. So story number 1 was told by Unsolved Mysteries, an old documentary. I forget the actor in there. I mean, he's always in a trench coat and stuff like that and walking around. And
picture, if you will, a crappy TV show with an unknown host.
I forget his name. So in 1967, Frank Hansen was was traveling the United States fair tour, showing off what he called the first gas-powered tractor. And at one of these shows, a stranger asked if he could have a word with him, and the stranger basically asked Mr. Hansen that he has an exhibit that might benefit from Mr. Hansen's showing experience, if you will.
Wink, wink, nod,
Yeah.
nod. Well, hey, mister,
Yeah.
want to make some cash? You know them guys that found that giant in the field over there? They're making like $2 a visitor. How about we try and make $3?
Actually, I believe they were charging 25 cents, I believe.
Well, yeah, they $3 a day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, if they make $3 a day on something like that back then, woohoo, brother. You know, minimum wage was like 22 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not in 67, but y'all get my point.
No.
I ain't that old, so don't blame me.
Frank Hansen then later met this gentleman, the show called The Stranger, at a refrigerated warehouse in some unknown location. Now, that's kind of a red flag, don't you think? If we still don't even know.
That's like Tom Biscardi meeting Tricky Ricky in an undisclosed location with a cooler full of ice.
Yeah.
You know, hey, I got something you can look at. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Exactly. So the stranger, who we still don't know in this documentary, told Frank Hansen that what he has for him belongs to him, and how he got this is not his business, and that they did not have to discuss it at that moment in time. So Frank Hansen then asked the stranger, why is there a reason why it needs to be kept in such a cold place? The stranger then says, it will be obvious to you in a moment. So then,
so look here. I'm about to show you something that's mine, and it's only mine, and ain't no business of yours how I got it. But I'm gonna show it to you because we gonna make some money. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I mean, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Eccentric millionaire. Next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. 10 folks said, Jed, move away from there.
I love that show, actually.
Everybody does.
The old one. I mean, the movie's my favorite, but I did watch. Yeah, exactly. So when the stranger, along with his helper, there was another guy in the documentary as an actor.
Of course,
helped
there
this
was.
Stranger, whoever he is, open up a crate which was full of ice, and Frank Hansen saw a body of an unknown, hairy, human-like creature looking back at him, frozen in a block of ice. He then agreed that he would take this thing with him on the fair tour and build it up as a educational exhibit.
Right. Let's see. Hey, kids, you all want to see a dead body? Come on in here. 25 cents, you can see a dead body. I got a dead body. You ever seen a dead body? It's a naked, hairy dead body, but it's still a dead body. Educate yourself with a dead body. Come on in here, kids. I mean, God, did I do it? I mean, look, sideshows were creepy as it was, but man, frozen.
Yeah,
not to mention it's a frozen dead body. You ever seen a frozen dead body, kid? Come in here. I got a dead body in a freezer. I'll show you.
It's just so weird because I've never been to, like, in Canada, we don't have like province fairs or anything like that. I mean, I used to go to a thing called the Rainmaker Rodeo, which was like a rodeo and a fair. I believe it was based out at St. Albert at the time. I never saw any.
You gotta love anything that's a good time where they tie a bull's nuts up around his waist and then get on his back and kick him. You know, yeehaw, that's fun.
Exactly.
Sorry, I'm not a big fan of rodeo.
Okay. That's okay. I didn't really take you for a cowboy.
Oh God, no! I love horses. It's just tying a bull's nuts up around his waist is a little unfair advantage if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. So over the next 2 years, Frank Hansen and his Minnesota Iceman, as he now called it, was the star attraction on this U.S. fair tour throughout the Midwest. And it wasn't until a young man by the name of Dr. Terry Cullen, who became a zoologist and a veterinarian researcher. I'm not too sure what that means.
Well, you know, back then we didn't know a whole lot about a whole lot. It was the 60s.
Right.
We barely knew anything about humans, let alone about animals, you know.
For sure. Yeah.
And we hadn't even discovered the gorilla yet. Well,
really? 1967?
Well, no, not the gorilla. Maybe it was the chimps.
Yeah, or something like that.
It was one of the great apes.
Yeah, it might have been one of the mountain gorillas or something. Like
Anyhow, I digress.
Yeah, so
y'all don't come here for accuracy of history. Trust me.
So, and then he kept coming back to see the Minnesota Iceman, and then he finally got an anthropologist from the University of Minnesota when this tour had stopped in Minnesota. You know, what a coincidence. To come take a look at it after trying to get other scientists to say, come down, take a look at this thing. I found this, you know, please come see it. And he just wasn't getting any answers from anybody until he got a hold of this anthropologist from the University of Minnesota, who I have no idea who
sent
it is.
Him a picture like that 1960s picture that's on our cover tonight. You know, they probably sent him a picture of that, and everybody just went like I did when Tricky Dicky was letting out the rubber suit picture with the possum guts and the cow tongue. Yeah. I mean, I nailed what it was even made out of. It was just like, oh, that's like, ew, that's like small rodent guts and a cow tongue sticking out of a rubber suit. That's a shame. I mean, but in the same token, that's why, damn it, what's the dude, Grover Krantz said that you damn near have to drag a dead body around from place to place to actually get people to believe you, which is why Tricky Dicky did drive a rubber body through Texas to the roadhouses trying to make some money. I mean, it literally, it's like history repeated itself.
Yeah, pretty much. For sure. So in this documentary, it was never the name was never mentioned who this University of Minnesota guy was, but then he gets there to look at it, and he was just stunned by what he saw on the frozen block of ice, and he couldn't find the words to talk to Terry Cullen afterwards. And Cullen was so frustrated that the anthropologist, Cullen's quote that he couldn't get 6 words out after seeing the creature. At that point, Cullen then got the attention of Dr. Ivan T. Sanderson and Dr. Bernard, I hope I don't butcher this name, Holvelmans, to take a look at the Minnesota Iceman. The two men couldn't believe what they were seeing in such great detail. And then this is when things kind of, well, I don't know if it was crap that hit the fan, you could call it. In May of 1969, Sanderson and Hooverman published their findings in the Argosy magazine, the same magazine that first published the Patterson film photos.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that picture of the cover of the magazine.
I'm pretty sure I am going to be able to bring it up here in just a moment because you sent it to me.
Yeah, I believe I did.
So, yes, I did. It's right. That should be showing. I will bring that up.
Right there we go. That's the one. That would be it. Now, here's the thing. Now it says found in Wisconsin. I'm just noticing that now.
Right. That's what I was saying earlier.
Wasn't this supposed to be in Minnesota?
Siberia was what we read from Wikipedia. Now we're reading Wisconsin, but they're calling it the Minnesota Iceman.
Right.
Now, to be fair, maybe the guy who made the cover, Wisconsin, Minnesota, what's the difference? You know, I mean, it was the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody was having a good time.
69. We was putting men on the moon in lots of ways in 1969. Some of them involved rockets, some of them did not.
Right, exactly. So, also, it could have been found in Wisconsin because maybe that's where Frank Hansen was at the time during the fair tour. That could have been that too.
You know, there it is, encased in the block of whatever it is.
Yeah,
it looks like a space alien.
Right. Well, right. You can see his, like in the middle picture there. You can see the teeth. You can see the nose. You can see the arm and fingers there. And I'm not too. I don't know if that's. I don't know who that is. That might be Frank Hansen himself. There looks like that's displayed in some sort of shopping mall.
Come on, come on. See the Minnesota Iceman. Just 25 cents for an up close look. Come on, come on. Minnesota's most exciting thing, the Iceman.
Oh, I've missed that sound. Fat girl farting or Chewbacca, you can't tell the difference.
That's right. You make the call. Speaking of making the call, let's take a moment here and say hello to the peoples that are hanging out live with us tonight, because you know they take their time out. We make them feel special. Hello, everybody out there. There's Mr. Tim McCune's hanging out with us. Maria Alegria, hello, Bella's with us tonight. Aaron Duncan, hey, let me tell you, that dude there, that's a legit camper. That man and his wife spent 4 days in what was a monsoon. It's not a hurricane because it didn't come out of the Caribbean, but believe me, finger after finger of heavy pouring down suck-ass rain for 4 solid days in the redwood with my goofy ass and my bullshit. Never once a complaint. They were the most delightful people to actually go camping with. Laid back, chill to sit in camp and look at the fire, make some food, go for a ride in the redwoods, take the dogs down, go fishing. I mean, they are as legit campers as I can make. And I want to say thank you very much live on the air for making a great vacation for me and the wife, because we needed it. I had enough, and now I'm already back in town, and I'm already wired up, and I'm yelling at the politicians on the TV, and I'm throwing marshmallows because I almost threw a brush, and that's a brand new TV, and I didn't want to do that. That would have been bad. So, as I was saying, they are fantastic people, and we are full on moving to Pi in August. The gold mining, gold panning, gold sluicing, gold everything, and Bigfooting, eating, sleeping, swimming. It'll be hot. And the water will be good and warm, and everything will be open. So, Pi still, we got a double campsite. I still got like 8 slots open for camping. So, if y'all want to go camping with the Reverend, get a hold of me here. Catch me on Facebook, on YouTube, on Google. Yeah, there's a billion ways to find me. Send me an email and contact, and I will put you down for a spot. The space is already paid for. You might have to pay for your car. Max it would be like $20. So that's the way that comes down, because extra cars always cost money in the national or the national forest park campgrounds. It's just weird. Well, it's limited park. It's limited parking. Yeah, but there's nobody in that spot. It's limited parking. Okay, I get it. Here's your $20. Anyhow, yeah, straight up legit people to go camping with ever. Moving right along here. God, we were covered in pixie dust and crystals, and there were fairies running around, and I mean, we saw quail and woodpeckers and goose. Was there goose? There were ducks. There were definitely ducks. I think there were goose. The resident ducks were assholes. They just would come over and circle around my dogs. They would just stay outside they would stay just outside the leash, and they would just circle around the damn dogs and taunt them. So
one time when my mom and my dad and I were camping in Lake in the Woods in Kenora, a duck actually bit my mom's toe while
that's the thing is, you don't get close enough to bite the Rev's toe, because I will kick a duck. You get close enough for me to kick a duck, and I'm going to launch that duck as far as the old Rev's foot can send it. I am not afraid of a duck. I am not running from a duck. I am not turning my back to a duck. Oh, hell no. That duck comes in on me aggressively, and just like a rooster, I'm going to punt that sucker as far as I can kick it. There's the Mr. Dean Cooper. He's hanging out in the house with us tonight. We're going to do his Quasi here in just a moment. Let's see here. Who else? Christy, Sci-Fi Gal, is back with us. Hello there, young lady. I'm glad all of you guys are feeling up to hanging out with me in my craziness tonight. Shane Barber, there he is. He's hanging out with us tonight. Let's see here. Don Wright, there he is, buddy. I hope you got good news from the doctor, man. You have to send me a message on Facebook. Catch me up. Rod Dupree. He's always in the place to be. Yes, Rod is aiming to come with us camping in August as well. Get your butt down here, buddy. There is. Oh, God, I got all over my microphone. But I'm glad he's here with us each and every single week. Let's see here. I know there were some other people that came in later on down the road here. There's Mr. Fang. I think I may have gotten that one right this time. Obsidian Radio's here in the house with us. Man, I saw a bunch of really cool rocks this week. We've got a bunch of rocks that we're going to put up for our Maxie's rock garden right after I put up my garden. And yeah, my garden's going up this week. Heck yeah, man. There's the Reverend Matthew Gaines. Hello, Reverend. There's a bunch of reverends in there. Rodney and Dean and me and Matthew, and I know I'm forgetting some other people. Hey, Teen Dinobots. Hello, Teen Dinobots. SoCal Forest Ninjas checked in with us as well. And I think, and yes, we can gold pan right behind our campsite in the river. It's going to be amazing. Gone Trapping. Hello, Gone Trapping. California Picking. See, I knew I better scroll up here. Life and Times of JCM is checking in as well. If I didn't say Natalie Smith, I certainly have now. All right. If I didn't mention your name there's Obstruct P. Hello, Obstruct P. And I think that is finally the one. All right. Okay. So, matter of fact, I got Dean's Quasi queued up here. So let's go ahead and run that sucker as well. Give us a little break here for a moment. And now, Quasi Theories from a Quasi Scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Solar flares are electrifying. Solar flares make for pretty northern lights and southern lights. The bigger the flare, the bigger the lights. The flare has to be aimed and timed just right, though, to hit the Earth. A British amateur astronomer, Richard Carrington, was the first one to observe a solar flare back on September 1st, 1859. Actually, another British astronomer, one Richard Hodgson, saw it at the same time, but somehow Carrington got first dibs on it. The Carrington event was named after him. What was the Carrington event, you might well ask? Well, that flare came at us with a major rider attached to it, a huge coronal mass ejection that hit us 17.6 hours later. Coronal mass ejections are mainly composed of electrons and protons. Since those electrons and protons have, respectively, negative and positive charges, they wreak havoc on our magnetic field, making it surge stronger and weaker, back and forth across the planet. The Earth's magnetic field twerks, as it were, the twerking continuing for as long as it takes for the mass of particles to go by. Now, we all remember our basic high school physics, don't we? What happens when you wiggle a magnetic field around an electrical conductor? Well, don't we? Do I hear crickets chirping? Telegraph operators around the world back in 1859 had a direct experience of what happens when a magnetic field twerks around a copper telegraph network. Electricity is generated. Sparks were reported flying off the key onto the operator's hand, some getting burns from the shock. Sparks flew off insulators on the telegraph poles. Operators disconnected the batteries that powered the lines, but were still able to key in messages using the induced current. Some wires melted. There's plenty of evidence that such things have hit the Earth in the past relatively frequently, geologically speaking. Here's a hypothetical quasi-question. What effect would a Carrington-scale coronal mass ejection have today? The answer is not at all hypothetical or quasi. It would blow out most of our satellites, electricity grid, cell phone network, radios, TVs, cell phones, computers. Anything with an electrical conductor in it could be toasted. even your toaster. Need we worry? Surely, knowing that such things are likely to happen, our engineers, our governing bodies, our corporate masters have more than adequately prepared things to get us up and running toot sweet. You know, an adequate supply of backup electricity transformers and such emergency plans and similar reasonable precautions, like putting our electrical grid underground and shielded. Perhaps, in a happier alternate reality, our leaders have done so, but not in this timeline. When the next big coronal mass ejection hits us, it will be, as my college buddy Weird Ward would say, toot toot kablooey. You may read the text of this on my blog at bhaidin.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Toot, toot, kablooey. No finer words were ever spoken by a genius, I'm sure. Toot, toot, kablooey. Thank you for that, Dean. And the solar flares. Yeah, well, you know how it goes, man. It's only going to take the wrong thing one time. And then, and then kablooey. I mean, that really is. That really is going to be. So now, this was the this was the figure that the two of them had come up with during their investigation of said hairy animal, and they said that they actually even found testes and a penis.
That's correct. Yep.
Where do we go from there?
All right, so once that Argosy magazine got published and put out, national attention was quickly put on Frank Hansen. So much so, a local cop showed up at Frank Hansen's house in the summer of 1969. So about a year or so since he's been traveling with this thing. And the local cop asked if he could bring a pathologist, which Frank Hansen agreed to. But then Frank Hansen left in the middle of the night before the local police pathologist could take a look at this thing and actually do a study on it the next morning. Reason being, it is illegal to carry a dead body across state lines. Also, it was illegal. The cops, and also if it was illegal, the cops wanted to know how it was killed, but we wouldn't know that because the stranger told Frank Hansen that that's none of his business. So what are we covering up here? So, and then a few months later, Frank Hansen was back on the United States fair tour with a replica of the body. What happened to the real body, no one knows for sure to this day. So that was kind of the first story I was kind of
right. That was story number one.
But I think, Jeff, I'll let you talk about the Vietnam thing because you seem to have gotten at it already. So I'll let you tell that.
Well,
I'm not too sure about that part, but it is very interesting.
Well, they had claimed that it was there wasn't much to it. It just at some point they had claimed that they had gotten rid of the body because it was a Vietnam rock ape, and they weren't sure whether it was part human or not. So that was one of the reasons that they said that they had disposed of the body was because they weren't really sure what this thing was in the modern times. Right. But like we're trying to figure out here, that just where did it actually come from? Did it come from Wisconsin? Right. Did it come from Siberia? Did it come from Vietnam? And back then they were still looking for this missing link, between man and apes. They didn't really even understand the true DNA, sequencing between humans and whatnot.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
There was no link, half human, half ape thing. It didn't work that way. It just, and if this thing was real at one time, it wouldn't have necessarily had to have been a Neanderthal again. It very well could have been the Siberian Paranthropus. And we talk about the Paranthropus species that have always been there throughout the entire evolution of mankind, of humankind. There has always been a large, robust, thick-bodied, thick-boned, not so bright, upright walking, straight-hipped Paranthropus creature until modern times, until we say modern time. Why it couldn't exist today? Certainly they could.
Yeah.
And it very well could be what Bigfoot is that fifth chimpanzee. Yeah. We have chimps, we have the bonobos, we have the billy apes, and we have humans, which are all of the chimpanzee line. You're all 99 something degree within each other, close to each other.
Right.
The Paranthropus amongst us would probably just be some other form of upright walking chimpanzee. There's a bunch of us. The 6-foot billy ape, the lion killer, walks around on 2 feet a lot, uses tools a lot, uses sharpened sticks to kill things like each other. That's pretty man-like. Who says that something didn't die out in the 60s and maybe this was the last one? And it's a shame that there was no actual DNA sample acquired when Sanderson was there actually.
Yeah.
And how did that guy, that guy is like like Pilates, who just kind of like pops into everything paranormal in that time period, and
right.
Again,
well, I do have another name down the road I'll get to that even you would probably have some.
All right. Well, let's move right along here.
Okay. All right. So I'll just kind of skip the second story and just because it was basically a somewhat of a repeat what I just said, but I'll just say a couple of things in this story as told by the BigfootReport.com. The Minnesota, Frank Hansen, the keeper of the corpse, claimed it had been found locked in an ice floe off Siberia in the Sea of Okhotsk. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. For the show, the ice was painstakingly pared down over the body. So that ice that you see in that kind of cooler or coffin kind of thing was shaved down. Like it was bigger than what it actually was in that picture. So for whatever reason. And then again, it kind of talks about Dr. Bernard Hooverman and Ivor T. Sanderson, and they were given like 3 days to view this thing and that same kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. The creature had been killed due to one eye being missing and the other hanging out of the socket with blood all around it. And that is right from the mouth of Hooverman. Because I saw in that documentary there, short video documentary of an interview with him. Dr. Hooverman first thought it was fake until he got a look at the creature up close. And Sanderson and Hooverman got to study the Minnesota Iceman for 3 straight days. So there was kind of that kind of.
You would think after 3 days you'd be able to tell if something was made out of foam rubber and because it was again the early or the mid to late 60s, just like the Patterson Bigfoot, you don't have a whole lot of costume choices to make this stuff out of.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, I look at that and I'm like, okay, I see a right arm, I see 2 legs, I see the hand up over the head there is where it was placed. I mean, I don't know what kind of materials they had back in 1966 or 67 or 68 or 69. I mean,
it started going on tour in 67, so it would have had to have
been made.
Actually,
I have found some information. It was actually on tour earlier than that.
So you'd have to think of it, at least 6 months to a year of it being made before that. So you'd really have to go back and whoever the talent was that would have made something again like this never came out of the woodwork to claim it, and that's kind of crazy.
For sure. So then the third story was told by Animal X documentary. Again, it starts with on December 16th, Bernard Hoolerman and Ira G. Sanderson. They come and take a look at this thing, but it's told totally different than the first two stories. And that's what I'm kind of saying. There's like Frank Hansen always had these multiple stories of where this thing came from. So who's to say if any of these are true or what one is the one that actually makes sense? But the origins of the so-called Minnesota Iceman started in Chico, California, actually.
Chico, California.
In 1966.
Well, that's just north of me here by about an hour, actually.
Yeah. It's just outside of San Francisco.
Yeah, well, I'm well, technically everything's just outside of San Francisco.
Okay, fair enough.
It's like 4 hours north of San Francisco, but yeah, it's just outside of San Francisco.
Right, yeah. So hominoid researcher Lloyd Pye saw the Iceman himself, and he thinks it was
wait. Everything you know about everything I ever said about the universe is wrong, Lloyd Pye?
Yeah.
Okay, that guy. All right. So
I figured you have heard of him before.
Yeah.
That's why I waited until near the end to give you the good stuff. Sounds like, oh, Jeff's gonna lose his lid on this guy.
Well, no, Lord Pye was fun to watch. He was just wrong about everything. It's okay.
Yeah. So apparently he saw the Iceman for himself, and he thinks it was a young Bigfoot that was shot. And over the years, Frank Hansen came out with several different stories on how this creature was found. One of them was he killed the creature himself in the Minnesota woods while on a hunting trip. And then, of course, we get into Vietnam. But then Lloyd Pye believes that Frank Hansen's story of him shooting the creature himself makes the most sense to him because, as you can see, the creature put his arm like this. The bullet goes through these two bones here in the wrist, through one eye, and blows out the back of the head. That's what he described it.
Well, that's definitely not being shot from behind out through the eyeball, is it?
No.
So we got one story, like the Wild Wild West, where Wyatt Earp stands in front of Wild Bill and shoots him man to man, when in actuality, he waited for Wild Bill to get up to the little tree and then he shot him in the back.
Right.
So we're not really sure which one's true, but hey, why not?
Yeah.
But then again, we are talking about Lloyd Pye, so
yeah.
Exactly.
But then there was another. Now the Vietnam stuff gets really weird. There was a doctor named Dr. Helmut Luce Wisoa. I'm sure I butchered that name too. He thinks it came from Vietnam. A report came out on November 1st of 1966 that the U.S. Marines shot a big ape. There are no large apes. Large apes do not live in Vietnam, at least not at that time. I don't know if there is something.
I once had a man tell me he shot a gorilla. I once had a man tell me he shot a gorilla in the Philippines. I'm like, well, if you did, you was at a zoo.
Yikes. And there is a connection between Vietnam and Frank Hansen. Frank Hansen was actually a fighter pilot in Vietnam with the United States Air Force. And Frank Hansen, I believe, apparently brought this creature back to the U.S. with him from Vietnam. Multiple doctors and animal experts in Vietnam and local witnesses in Vietnam backed up the story in this little documentary. And some say they saw the creature even alive in a cage with Frank Hansen.
So then he shot the poor thing through the wrist and through the eyeballs after it was alive in a cage in his house. That's a little difficult to swallow.
And then, so basically then what wraps this kind of my side of the story up, there was a gentleman by the name of Bob Smith. Now, I'm not sure if that's his real name or not. I got a feeling it's not. He was a private investigator and police detective, and he looked into the Minnesota Iceman story. And the FBI started actually investigating this. and started questioning Frank Hansen along with this Bob Smith guy under two possible crimes. Like I said, one of them being a homicide, if this was an actual human-like creature, and the other being a federal crime of transporting a corpse across United States lines, which is
Blame
illegal.
Canada.
Yeah, I guess. And wrap it up here, Bob Smith did talk to Frank Hansen, and Bob Smith said Frank Hansen became upset and nervous about the investigations, and then the creature just disappeared. And then in the creature's place, Hansen claims to now be using a copy or model of the actual Minnesota Iceman. So the FBI and the Smithsonian Institute backed off and turned down the heat, and nothing has been heard of Frank Hansen or the Minnesota Iceman himself since then. So that's basically all that I had
until
down.
2013. The Minnesota Iceman was featured on season 4 of episode 6 of the A&E popular show. But in February 2013, the Minnesota Iceman was reportedly auctioned on eBay. The listing read, "This is the actual sideshow gaff build the Minnesota Iceman by Frank Hansen in the 1960s. This is the one-of-a-kind hoax that was fabricated by the 20th century showman. It was purchased by Austin, Texas Museum of the Weird owner Steve Busty, who has placed it on public display without the ice, by the way. So you can actually go to the Museum of Weird in Austin, Texas, and you can see said rubber-assed Minnesota Iceman, whatever the replacement was. We don't know where the original went, but the rubberized replacement of it is available for viewing there. And that, my friends, is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Squatchers Lounge podcast. You got anybody you want to give a shout out to before we head out?
I just want to give a shout out to my girlfriend Sarah watching me, and thank you for supporting me while I try and chase this mystery and hopefully solve. And I do want to quickly say one quick thing about my project, because I just started this group last week, and a few people have joined in, which I do appreciate. So if any of you out there, whether you're watching in Canada, United States, or if you're coming up to Canada, what this project is what I'm doing is trying to collect my own reports for myself, for my Sasquatch research. And I'm basically looking at 3 areas, which would be Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, which are the 3 prairie provinces here up in Canada, which I have a little bit easier access to get to, because when I was talking to some other researchers that have helped me along the way the last few weeks since I got back into this, their big advice was stick to one area. And with me living in Alberta, the closest area with Sasquatch reports would be anywhere from north of Grand Prairie, as far north of Alberta as Grand Prairie, all the way down to the southern Alberta Rockies and into Lethbridge and that kind of thing. But there have been reports, not many though, in the province of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So I kind of find that interesting. Personally, what I think they are is them passing through, trying to get to other areas where they might migrate, and while they're trying to get into the northern Pacific Northwest United States and British Columbia. I'm not touching British Columbia because I think there's already a great amount of work being done there by other researchers, such as Thomas Steenberg and the late great John Green did lots of work down there. So I'm really focusing in on areas that are close to me, which would be Alberta. So that's why I started the Canadian Prairie Sasquatch Research Project, because there's really nobody out there other than Mr. Thomas Steenberg taking a look at Alberta, and and I want to take a look at Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. So if you want to join the group, that would be wonderful. It'd be great to get the support. If you have anybody that has had a report in those areas, feel free to send it my way. You can reach me through email, which would be I'm just going to get the note here. I believe it's the Canadian Prairie Sasquatch Project at gmail.com. I'm just going to quickly grab it here because I don't want to make a mistake and get the wrong email in case people want to put out the report. Yes, capital C, P, and N, obviously Sasquatch is an S. So Canadian Prairie Sasquatch at gmail.com if you would like to send me a report or if you have a sighting of Sasquatch in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Take it to the man in the great white north, because there's nobody else up there really taking a look at it. With that, folks, we're gonna say goodnight. We will see you next week, and may the Squatch be with you. Bye-bye. Take care now. You ain't gonna have to go home, but you gotta get the hell up out of here.
Yeah.